Dr. Anshu Padayachee, thank you for your time for this interview. You're a successful woman leader, the CEO at South African Technology Network, and a passionate advocate for women empowerment who co-founded the first South African NGO to help victims of domestic abuse in 1986. I feel honored to invite you to the Global Women Empowerment Summit to listen to your insights and plans around women empowerment. So,
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Padayachee, how have you become interested in women empowerment and domestic violence? What have you learned along the way of supporting women for more than 30 years?
Thank you for that question. Very interesting one indeed. My interest in this whole issue of domestic violence really started when I was undertaking my master's degree in criminology. And during that time, I identified specific reasons why children committed offenses or behaved in particular ways, especially young children under the age of 16, who we called juvenile offenders. So in studying these juvenile offenders, one of the most profound things that came out of the study was that many of these children came from homes where there was abuse, but they didn't understand that this was abuse. They would say things like, I didn't do my homework last night because I slept outside. And when I questioned in depth why they slept outside, they would say things like, my father beat my mother and us up and chased us out of the home. And that was the common thread that went through all of these children. It appeared as though either they were abused or their mothers were abused and they could do nothing about it. And as a result, much of their delinquent or offender behavior was a kind of manifestation of what was going on in their lives. And they would respond in the same way their dads responded to conflict or anger or something they didn't like. They would do the same. And they were at school as well. Teachers found them to be offensive, didn't like these children, treated them badly because they were troublemakers, considered troublemakers. And that is what prompted me to look further into what they meant by my dad beat my mother and beat us. It was something that was not known to me in my environment. I grew up in a family where I was the youngest of 3 children, the only daughter, was never treated differently from the boys, were given the same opportunities, grew up on a diet of community work and assisting the community. And I would never forget my late dad when I qualified and was the first person to get the PhD in criminology, first Black woman to get a PhD in criminology, which was on domestic violence, incidentally. He said to me, whilst I congratulate you, I also want you to know that the study is not worth anything if you can't put the recommendations into place. And so this is what prompted me and my colleague, Judge Pillay, to start the first advice desk for abused women. Judge Pillay, who was the previous UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, was at the same time, we met, of course, through our 2 young daughters in a lift club. We met after school waiting for our children to come home, and we talk about these issues and what we were doing and what we were studying. And both of us were then given scholarship, she to Harvard to do a PhD in human rights law, and myself to do my PhD in criminology. And I chose domestic violence as my subject and as subject matter, and she chose human rights. And we promised each other that when we get back, we will look at what what is happening and what we can do for the country. At that stage in the country, there was nothing. The word domestic violence hadn't even been coined. And no one knew what this was, and it was very much a hidden topic. So we started the first center from our homes. We would work day and night trying to assist women, etc. But there were just a few. In the first year, I think we had something like 135 cases, and we thought, oh, we could get this done in no time. and we'll sort this problem out. But what we didn't realize was what we were dealing with at that stage was only the tip of the iceberg, that women didn't speak about it, that those who spoke about it didn't want to be identified. They wanted all this information confidential. They just wanted to speak about it, and they didn't know where to go. There were no facilities. There was no law protecting them. There was actually nothing. And so Judge Pillay and myself at that stage, and she was the first woman judge, Black woman judge in the country, we decided that we would do something about this and started the Center for Domestic Violence. And it is now some 36 years old and still located at the what was then called the University of Durban-Westville, which is now called the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And this organization was responsible for training many other NGOs. We've written manuals for the police, social workers, the medical profession. We did work internationally on sexual harassment, etc. And we see this groundswell now of women, the Me Too campaign, etc., talking about this. And so I believe that our work, just looking at these figures that have come out now, I mean, it's world-wide crisis at the moment. And to know that 50% of the women, that the population of the world is made up by more women than men, and nothing is being done to save them. So we believe that something needs to be done, and women need to come together with men who believe in this, in this cause, to stop it, to stop violence and give women the opportunity to do what they want to do.
Dr. Padayachee, thank you for that answer. It was so powerful. So can you please now share about your activities and plans, including the plan you shared with Andrea to write letters to presidents in the world?
In and around 1988, 1989, one of the things that was happening in South Africa, that was pre-apartheid, no, post-apartheid, sorry, not 89. This was in the period 1996, when our great president Mandela had just taken office in 1994, and we were delighted with his taking over, and we knew that things would change in our country. And one of the things that was happening in the country at the moment, at that particular moment, was the fact that women had come from the rural areas to make a living in the cities. And oftentimes women would sleep on the streets rather than travel back home because transport wasn't available, etc. Whilst there was tremendous progress being made in the country, and President Mandela was doing everything in his power to make sure that the poorest of the poor got everything, there was only so much he could do. He was trying to get his cabinet in place and get reviewing what was happening and looking at the country, which was already bankrupt, and trying to reinvent what he thought was and put together his vision for this country. And so one of the projects that we at the Advice Desk identified was a project at the Durban City Station. At this railway station, women would sell their wares like baskets. They would make it, come from the cities, and at night from the rural areas, and sleep there on the streets, cover themselves and sleep, and they would sleep in rows. And the women complained to us that at night, some of the men would come in, knew they were sleeping there, and it was all women, and they would rape them. And so what these women would do is they would take turns to sleep at the inns, so that it's not the same woman. And we just thought that was so horrifying, that kind of detail. And at that time, Judge Pillay was the president of an organization called Equality Now in New York, of which Jessica Newworth was the executive director. And we said to her, look, this was the problem. And she said, no, we've got to lobby this. So we lobbied our president, and we said to him that we think that, these women, they don't have places to stay. We understand the country is busy at the moment trying to get housing, etc., for the poor, but please give these women protection. They are making a living by selling these wares, etc., the baskets and whatever equipment they were selling or products they were selling. And he immediately responded and provided a mobile police station right outside where these women were sleeping at night. And we thought that was tremendous. And we believe that if presidents of the world can do something about this pandemic, like they're doing with COVID. I mean, everybody is following with COVID. With HIV, AIDS, governments came to the fore and were there to assist their countries, etc. And why not with this pandemic of domestic violence? And that's the question we ask. But in my discussions with Andrea, I suggested that we first look at what progress countries have made in the last 5 years with regard to equality of women or progress of women. And once we have those figures and statistics and some kind of information, we should use that as a kind of background information to lobby the presidents of the world so that they could deal with this issue of domestic violence as a collective rather than one at a time. And I understand that different countries will have different legislations, but if we produce this document and show it to presidents, they will see some countries have made tremendous progress with regard to women, the Nordic countries, etc. And then you would see other countries that have not made such progress. And the question would be why and what is it we can do? Because those are the people that we depend on. Those are the people we vote into power. And those are the people that need our votes. So we have the power in our hands to ensure that we can make a difference. And that is one way in which we can make a difference. So that is my proposal to this group of women who have taken the time to deal with this issue of the empowerment of women.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Doctor. And my next question is, what is your message for the global leaders out there who's trying to engage themselves in this issue of women empowerment?
Well, again, as I said, you know, there's a lot of talk going on, but there's no action. And what we are asking for is substantial action. There needs to be laws to protect women in countries where there aren't laws. There needs to be proper sentencing of people who violate these laws and not just protect men who commit these offenses and say they will never do it again. The cycle of violence is unbelievable. If we do not stop it now, the next generation will do exactly the same and the same. And research over the years has shown that children who live in homes with violence will perpetuate this kind of value system. So if we don't stop it now, we're going to have a country of people or countries of people who will be killing women. And these are the women that give birth to the nation. These are the women who produce these people. And also I want to say that women also need to take charge of how they bring up their young men as well, and not treat them differently from their daughters. So sometimes even women are their own worst enemies, and they argue that culture says this. Culture does not differentiate between who I am and who my brother is. It's we who decide that. We say we are different. We treat each other differently. So as long as women raise their children, and men, of course, who raise their children, but some cultures, men will not be raising children. In raising your children, ensure that those values are passed on to them, that they understand that there's no difference, except biological differences between men and women, but our ambitions are the same. Our values are the same. We can do the same things that they can do. And I think that is what is very important. So whilst we ask presidents and leadership of countries to make that change, we need to have this groundswell, the tsunami of women around the world who demand this, because this is your right. You've got to access your right on your own. It's there, it's written. Someone wrote it. Someone said you have this. You know that you've requested this because there's no difference. So access it. The only way we can access it is to support each other. Do not put another woman down. And this is why I say women sometimes are their own worst enemies. We need to take women along. A good leader is a leader who creates other leaders. We're not going to be around forever. And so training young women, ensuring that young women can take this baton from us and move on is extremely important for change and for the future of our nations.
Yes, indeed, action is very important. And lastly, Doctor, I'd like to ask you to send a message to the women who have experienced abuse in their lives.
Well, my first point is it is not your fault. Most women who are abused often believe it is their fault. It is not your fault. We understand that there is fear. We understand your fears. We understand that you have to protect families. Sometimes you feel that if you talk about it, and we know that women are often asked to keep quiet about it because the family name will be tainted in some way. We say to you that there are several organizations in the world. There are several NGOs, like we have the advice desk, where you can talk in confidence, where you can have someone to talk to, get advice from, because there are ways in which you can get help. So it's not that you are alone. Don't believe you are alone. There are people out there who can help you. The only way you can get help is to talk about it. Talk about it confidentially. No one is going to tell your story to anyone. So go out there and seek that help.
Thank you, Dr. Padayachee. We're fortunate to have a woman leader as you, and thank you for your dedication to empower women in need. And I believe that your voice will reach out to the bigger audience globally and create a more significant wave to bring profound changes for our future generations. Thank you for your interview.
Thank you very much for having me, Jane, and good luck with the summit. Thank you so much.